History tells us about emperors, warriors, and grand battles, but rarely about the women who entered the Colosseum without fame, without protection, and without control over the roles they were forced to play. Somewhere between performance and punishment, their stories vanished. Not because they were unimportant, but because they made people uncomfortable. What really happened to female prisoners inside Rome's greatest arena? And why did ancient writers avoid telling the full story? Tonight, we follow the whispers left behind in stone and reveal a darker reality few people ever hear about before we uncover what history tried to hide. Subscribe to Unseen Evidence, because some truths were never meant to be found, and tell me where you're watching this from. I'm curious to know. Let's continue. History does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it moves quietly, slipping between stones and memories, leaving only faint impressions that require patience to uncover. And nowhere does that quiet weight feel stronger than in the shadow of the great Roman Colosseum, a place most people imagine through images of roaring crowds and heroic combat, but rarely through the softer, more unsettling stories hidden behind the spectacle. Stories about individuals who entered its gates not as champions or rulers but as prisoners. Women whose presence in that immense structure revealed something deeper about the society that watched them and the system that shaped their lives. Because long before anyone stepped onto the arena floor, their journey had already begun far away, across distant provinces connected by the vast network of Roman roads. Roads that carried merchants, soldiers, travelers, and sometimes captives, whose identities slowly transformed as they moved closer to the heart of the empire. And among them were women from countless backgrounds, some from coastal villages where waves defined the rhythm of life, others from inland settlements surrounded by farmland or desert, some familiar with cities, and others who had never seen walls as large as Rome's before. And yet, regardless of origin, they eventually encountered the same reality, that within the Roman system, personal stories often became simplified into roles, names replaced by categories, and identities shaped by expectation rather than choice. And when these women arrived in Rome, they entered a world that viewed public life as performance, a city where visibility mattered, and where the Colosseum stood as the ultimate stage upon which power displayed itself, not only through grand architecture and elaborate ceremonies, but through carefully arranged narratives meant to reassure spectators that order existed and that Rome controlled chaos. And in this environment, female prisoners represented something both familiar and unsettling, because Roman society held strict ideas about gender roles. And when women appeared within the arena context, whether as performers, symbolic figures, or participants in stage spectacles, they disrupted those expectations in ways that drew attention, curiosity, and sometimes controversy. And yet, before any public moment, there was waiting. Long hours spent in holding areas beneath the seating levels, where sunlight filtered weakly through narrow openings. Corridors where footsteps echoed, and distant cheers drifted down from above like waves against stone. Places that transformed time into something heavy and uncertain, because waiting allowed imagination to grow stronger than reality. And many historical accounts forget this part, focusing instead on dramatic events while ignoring the psychological space between arrival and appearance, the slow build of anticipation that defined daily existence for those held behind the walls. And among these women were individuals assigned different roles depending on circumstance. Some trained for performances designed to entertain or convey symbolic stories, others simply waiting without clear knowledge of what the future held, learning to observe small details such as the rhythm of guards' movements or the tone of distant announcements, because survival within structured uncertainty often depended on awareness rather than strength. And the arena itself functioned as theater as much as competition. Roman audiences valued storytelling and symbolism, and organizers crafted narratives that reflected mythology, morality, or political messaging, turning individuals into characters within larger spectacles that blended drama with cultural meaning. And within these performances, female prisoners occupied a complex space, simultaneously visible and constrained, expected to fulfill roles assigned by others while still navigating their own internal worlds. And some adapted by embracing the performance, discovering ways to maintain dignity within limitation, while others resisted quietly, preserving a private sense of self that existed beyond the crowd's gaze, and occasionally, individuals gained unexpected admiration, not through displays of aggression, but through presence alone, through composure that resonated with audiences accustomed to dramatic extremes, reminding us that human response to pressure varies widely and cannot be reduced to simple assumptions, and the crowd itself functioned almost like another character within the arena, thousands of voices blending into one shifting force, capable of influencing outcomes through reaction alone, applause signaling approval, silence creating tension, curiosity transforming unknown individuals into temporary figures of fascination. And for women entering this environment, perception often mattered more than truth, because the audience's interpretation shaped the narrative in real time, turning gestures or moments into symbols larger than the individuals themselves, and historical records rarely preserve their voices directly, instead offering fragments through inscriptions, passing references, or commentary, from writers more interested in societal norms than personal stories. Yet between these lines, historians detect patterns suggesting that female presence in arena contexts challenged traditional expectations and sparked debates about identity and spectacle within Roman culture. And beyond the public moments, there existed private experiences rarely acknowledged, the formation of silent networks among those waiting together, shared glances that conveyed reassurance without words, small acts of kindness that created temporary communities within uncertain circumstances, because human beings naturally seek connection even when systems attempt to isolate them. And these relationships shape emotional resilience, altering how individuals perceive their surroundings and their future. And understanding the psychological dimension of the arena reveals that it was not merely a physical space, but a mental landscape where awareness, adaptability, and perception played critical roles, where time could feel stretched and reality sharpened under the weight of observation. And while many stories from antiquity focus on grand figures such as emperors or celebrated performers, the experiences of lesser-known individuals reveal deeper truths about the society that created such spectacles, showing how power, entertainment, and identity intertwined in ways that still echo today. And behind every event lay political motives, games organized to reinforce authority, spectacles designed to unify audiences or demonstrate cultural values, and female prisoners sometimes became symbolic figures representing conquered regions, moral lessons, or contrasts meant to highlight Roman identity against perceived outsiders, illustrating how the arena functioned as a mirror, reflecting both strength and anxiety within the empire. And as time passed, many individual stories faded, names lost to history, while myths simplified reality into dramatic narratives that overshadowed quieter truths. Yet the absence of detailed records does not mean these lives lack significance. Rather, it challenges modern listeners to imagine the human complexity hidden beneath historical silence. And today, visitors walking through the Colosseum encounter ruins that feel distant from lived experience, photographing arches and imagining grandeur without sensing the subtle emotional layers embedded in the stone. But beneath their footsteps linger memories of countless individuals whose presence shaped the atmosphere of the arena, including women whose experiences challenge simplified depictions of ancient spectacle, reminding us that history is not only about what was displayed, but also about what was felt, what was endured quietly beyond the spotlight. And perhaps the deepest darkness of history lies not in dramatic moments, but in forgetting, in allowing voices once heard by thousands to fade into anonymity. And yet, by listening carefully to the whispers left behind, we can begin to reconstruct a more nuanced understanding of the past, recognizing the Colosseum not only as a monument to entertainment, but as a testament to human adaptation, resilience, and the enduring complexity of identity within systems of power. And as the sun sets over the ancient structure and shadows stretch across its arches, the silence invites reflection, encouraging us to look beyond spectacle and consider the lives that move through those corridors, lives that remind us history is never as simple as legend suggests, and that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that survive, only as echoes waiting to be heard again.